our last rhetorical strategy that we are learning about, and the last strategy that you'll be using to write an essay is argument. And argument can be defined as making a claim about a controversial topic and supporting that claim with reasoning and evidence. So let's start by talking about claims. That's really the most important element of an argument. And, the whole argument really is developed from that claim and supports that claim. And your claim is your thesis statement. So that's just a different word we use in an argumentative essay for a thesis statement. But this is the point that you're trying to make. This is what you're trying to persuade your audience of. So obviously, your claim should reflect your position on a controversial issue. So now we'll talk a little bit more about topic choice, which is really important. And because you can't do research in this class, your topic choice is a little limited. But let me just give you a few examples of claims. So one example is physical education should not be a required course at the college level. And that's an example of the type of claim you'll probably argue in this paper. So it's something that is relevant to your peer group, and it's something that you can discuss just with reasoning, and you don't have to do all this research and data and statistics. You can just reason your way through that. But as you can see, that's very clear, and this is a controversial topic. Some colleges require phys ed, some don't. And so we definitely see people falling on both sides of the issue, and you just take a stance. This should or should not be true. Every high school student should have a job. Again, something that is a little more of a narrow topic and that can just be reasoned. Children under the age of 12 should not have cell phones. This is one I've had several students argue about children and cell phones because it's becoming more and more common for very young children, 6, 7-year-olds, to have iPhones. And a lot of my students get a little heated about that because they think that, they had to wait till they were 13 or 14 for a cell phone, so these other kids should have to wait too. So there's just some examples of claims. So let's talk about topic choice. The first thing you have to consider is your topic must be controversial. There should be more than one side to the argument. And that might seem quite obvious, but more than just a few times, I'll have students who try to argue something that is factual and is a widely held belief. It's not controversial. There are not very many people who would disagree with them. So that is something to consider. So something like this. I have had a student try to argue this before. Everyone should work out and be healthy. Okay, well, most people agree. Can you find anyone who should say that you should be lazy and eat junk food all the time? Now, some people may not practice that, but everyone is going to agree that, yeah, you should exercise, you should eat healthily. That's a widely held belief. Here's another one. Parents should not abuse their children. Well, do you know anyone who argues that parents should abuse their children, that children should be abused? No, these are not controversial. These are widely held beliefs. Now, if you find something you're like, oh, well, I just think, I feel really strongly about working out and I feel really strongly about child abuse. Well, you can find a strategic approach to that topic that is more controversial. For example, CrossFit is the best way to stay fit. Now, that is controversial. Some people don't like CrossFit. Some people think it's better to, do some other form of exercise. So that is just a different approach that makes it, finds the controversial element in the topic. This is the best diet. This is the best, like everyone should eat paleo or something like that. Or as far as the other one, you could argue that spanking is equivalent to child abuse. This is really controversial in our society. Is spanking okay? Is it not? Here in the South, I feel like it's a little more widely accepted, spanking children. But so again, you have to find the right approach to make sure that your claim is an answer to controversy. So these claims, these second two, are controversial. So just make sure as you craft your thesis statement, your claim, that it does provide a stance on a controversial topic, that someone could say, no, this is true. and take the opposite side. Okay, so once you've developed a claim, you need support. And since you cannot do research in this class, you must rely solely on reasoning and logic. And one of the best ways to develop that reasoning is to create what I call a pro-con chart around your topic, because you really need to consider both sides of the issue, okay? So I've come up with an example here, and this is a very broad example. Your topic will probably be much narrower, but for the sake of discussion, this one works. So, does television have an overall positive or negative effect on society? And I asked this as a question because in your Essay 5 prompt, all the topic choices I have listed as questions, like which stance would you take on this? So, you fill out a list of the pros and cons for each side. So, what are the positive effects of television? Well, it provides entertainment, it could be educational, we have information, news, television can help build community, you have access to sports from around the world. Those are all good things. On the negative side, there are lots of objectionable elements. A lot of television glorifies drugs, violence, immoral things that, as believers we wouldn't agree with, extramarital sex or what have you. Television can definitely be a big time waster, especially now that we have Netflix and we can binge watch. The media can be biased. Television can often act as a relationship substitute, like a babysitter, or a married couple never actually connects with each other, just sit around and watch TV, hurts self-image, so you can see both sides of the topic. So once you have your pro-con list, I actually encourage you, even if you think you know which side you're going to take, make the pro-con list, create all the reasons that support either side of the topic, okay? And then you're going to pick your top 3 or 4 reasons, and those will be your body paragraphs. So for the sake of example, I chose, we'll take the negative side. So your claim will be, television has an overall negative effect on society. And so your main points will be something along these lines. Television often contains objectionable elements. Television promotes a biased media. Television can lead to people wasting their time. Television can lead to interpersonal problems. So I hope you can see the really clear relationship between my claim and all my main points. Television is negative because of the objectionable elements. It's negative because of a biased media. All right, so you want to have that really clear connection. And you also want to be very careful in your argument. Does television always lead to people wasting their time? No. Some people can be very disciplined and watch 30 minutes of television and turn it off and go on their merry way and be productive. But television often leads to people wasting their time. So sometimes you have to be really careful in how you word something in an argument, because you don't want to be too dogmatic, because that's very easy to disprove. There are always exceptions to the rule. So it's smart, argue smart. Don't argue intense, argue smart. All right, some additional tips on developing an argumentative essay. It's best to use your introduction to establish the controversy. So use that introductory paragraph, to say this is something that has been in the news, people argue about this issue because, and you can really even introduce the two sides. Some people think that spanking children is a helpful disciplinary tool and can establish authority in their lives. However, other people believe spanking is equivalent to child abuse because it can be done in anger. The child can be physically hurt if the spanking is taken too far. And then you kind of use that to lead up to your claim and how you're going to present your argument. Be sure each of your main points clearly supports your claim. And I know that seems rather obvious, but you'd be surprised. People tend to sometimes in an argumentative essay drift into another rhetorical strategy, like they'll drift into process analysis, like how to spank your child, or they'll drift into sometimes like a comparison contrast type thing, and that's not what you want to do. You want to focus on the argument. Anticipate opposing views. It's always better to address the opposing side, especially if they've got a really good point. So, for example, if I was actually arguing that television topic, I have to acknowledge that there are a lot of good things that can come of television. Like television can be really beneficial. There are lots of educational programs. It's a great way for us to get the news from around the world and have awareness of other nations and other cultures. However, overwhelmingly, television has affected our society negatively. So it's okay to acknowledge, in fact, it's good to acknowledge the opposing side. That makes you sound, your argumentative voice is more objective. You don't sound as biased when you acknowledge that the other side can have some good points. You want to place your strongest point last. So I do really encourage you to do that, to think through which of these is the strongest point and make sure that one is last, because it just helps your argument go out with a bang. And for this essay, I am going to ask you to write in third person. So avoid second person and first person. And what this does is it takes your personal biases out of the equation and you maintain a more objective academic tone. Because if you are constantly saying, well, I think and I believe and according to my views, it can make you sound a little biased. And the best arguments are written with an emphasis on objective logic, on an emphasis on the facts. You don't want to come across as sounding super emotional or too personally invested. That's not a good academic argument. And I'll show you some examples when you look at the assignment. I'll have some sample essays for you to look at. And but that's just something to remember. I also ask you to write in third person because this last essay is really kind of a bridge into the next required English class. Most of you will be taking English 1320, and that class is all about argument. So you'll be learning a lot more about different types of arguments, different types of claims, how to do research, and in all of those papers, you're going to be asked to write in third person. So I want you to have a chance to practice that and kind of pave the way into that next English class that you'll be required to take as your gen ed. All right, so that's argument. I hope that makes sense to you, and good luck with your essays.